A warm welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. Let's dive right in. Cameroonian President Paul Biya has not been seen by his countrymen since he attended the China-Africa Forum in Beijing in early September. Speculations have arisen as to his whereabouts. And just last week, Cameroonian media carried headlines asking where the president is. A member of the government said the president is resting in Geneva, Switzerland, and that he is doing well. Well, there have been some developments on that narrative. As we entered into the weekend, Interior Minister Paul Atanga Nji sent a letter to regional governors saying discussion on the president's health was a matter of national security. Therefore, from the date of the letter, which is October 9, 2024, any debate in the media about the president's conditions is strictly prohibited, and offenders will face the full force of the law. Mr. Nji has also ordered regional governors to set up units to monitor broadcasts on private media channels as well as social networks. Interestingly, the ban has been criticized as an act of state censorship. One Yaoundé-based journalist and talk show host said the president is elected by Cameroonians and it's just normal that they worry about his whereabouts. The Committee to Protect Journalists says it is gravely concerned by this. Head of the CPJ Africa program, Angela Quintal, says trying to hide behind national security on such a major issue of national importance is outrageous. The Cameroonian National Communication Council has been unreachable for comment. But here are some things we need to know about Paul Biya, Cameroon's 91-year-old president.
Paul Biya has served as Cameroon's second president since 1982, thanks to a new law in June 1979 that designated the Prime Minister as the president's constitutional successor. Biya rose rapidly as a bureaucrat under President Amadou Ahidjo in the 1960s. The Catholic native of southern Cameroon served as Secretary General of the presidency from 1968 to 1975 and then as Prime Minister. He succeeded Ahidjo as president upon his surprise resignation in 1982 and consolidated power in the 1983-1984 staged attempted coup in which he eliminated all of his major rivals. During this time, in 1983, he had announced presidential elections to be held on January 14, 1984. It had been previously scheduled for 1985. Biya was the sole candidate in this election and won 99.98% of the vote. In February 1984, Ahidjo was put on trial in absentia for alleged involvement in the 1983 coup plot, along with two others. They were sentenced to death, although Biya commuted their sentences to life in prison. Biya survived the military coup attempt on April 6, 1984, following his decision on the previous day to disband the Republican Guard and disperse its members across the military. As president, Biya introduced political reforms within the context of a one-party system in the 1980s, and later accepted the introduction of multi-party politics in the early 1990s under serious pressure. He won the contentious 1992 presidential election with 40% of the plural single ballot vote and was re-elected by late margins in 1997, 2004, 2011 and 2018. Multiple sources have provided evidence that he did not win the elections in 1992, and political opposition have alleged subsequent elections suffered from rampant fraud. Under his rule, the country adopted a structural adjustment plan submitted to it by the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, which involved privatization, opening up TP competition, and reducing social spending. Civil servant salaries were reduced by 60%, and the informal sector increased very significantly. Biya is the second longest ruling president in Africa, after Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo in Equatorial Guinea, and is the longest consecutively serving current non-royal national leader in the world, and the oldest head of state on the planet.
Joining me now is international affairs analyst Achike Chudel. He is in Abuja. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Always a pleasure, Marachi.
The only thing we know at this point about the Cameroonian president Paul Biya's situation or condition is that he's in Geneva, said to be resting. The last time he was seen was in September when he attended the China-Africa Forum. And now we're learning that the Cameroonian media has been banned from discussing the health of the 91-year-old president. What do you think is going on?
Yeah, well, it gives you an idea of the kind of democracy that the government of that is being run in Cameroon. Obviously, if you look at even the at least basic understanding of democracy, you realize that what is going on is a clear violation of democratic tenets and ideals. Democracy embodies, participation of the people in governance, because democracy is essentially about the people, and it is the people that themselves that are involved or that are supposed to be involved in the process of choosing their political leadership. So, if a people have the mandate to choose their political leadership, then those people have the responsibility of determining their future. When this important decision making is taken away from the people and the government begins to subject the political discussion to begins to criticize people talking about politics, the very people that brought government to existence, then it simply tells you that there is something awry, something terribly wrong that has gone on with the polity. And I think that's the only way we can understand, we can explain away what is going on in Cameroon, that even the people do not have any right to discuss the affairs of their president. The president is the president, supposed to be the president of the people, and not the president of government functionaries and the administrative staff, Cameroon, and the administrative state, if I'll use that expression. And so when you take that away from the people, then the people absolutely are no longer involved in their governance. So it tells you that some other people are running the government. Perhaps I don't know exactly how much involved the president Paul Biya is in terms of what is happening around him. There is a possibility that decisions are now being taken on his behalf. So what it means again is that there are people that are acting unconstitutionally with regards to taking political decisions that should be taken by the president of Cameroon. That might seem to be a problem, because if the president is gravely ill or seriously impaired, whether emotionally, physically, mentally, then it means that the people are being shortchanged and that other people are the ones running the show behind the scene. That is a clear violation of the constitution of Cameroon.
Indeed, and there is someone running the government. Apparently, there is a someone who is sort of related to the president, from my understanding, from my sources in Cameroon. Someone who's related to the president, I think his nephew, who is sort of in charge of the business of governance. He's the one who things are done with the high order of the president. That is how Cameroon is being run at the moment. Paul Biya has been president since 1982. He's probably the only president I've ever known for Cameroon, and I think for this generation and the generation after me, he's also the only president they have known. Now, a statement from the Interior Minister said was said to have contained this ban that was set to regional governors, banning media houses, news media, anyone from discussing the president's health, saying that they would face a full wrath of the law. This should not be happening in democratically elected governments. So you rightly alluded to it, that this is what is in Cameroon. We cannot describe that as democracy. What do you think really is the psychology behind trying to control the information about the president's health and the clampdown on such information?
You see, a president, you see, the reason why the president is seen as the number one citizen is because of a country, is because he is supposed to embody all of the values and the ethos and the ideals of the nation state. All of these things are supposed to be reposed in him. So when he acts on behalf of the people, on behalf of the state. But there are times when even presidents themselves and elected political officers act in violation of the very oath of office that they have taken. And that's why you have the constitutional, in a proper democracy, constitutional safeguards for when such an opportunity, such an eventuality arises, so that either members of a state house of assembly or national assembly will sit and discuss the fate of their commander-in-chief or the person who is running the government when they feel that he can no longer act in the interest of the people. Then they have a right to, adopt certain measures, to ensure that that the polity is protected. And so, what is happening and not just in Cameroon, in Africa, is that there is a tendency for people to believe that the state is the president and the president is the state. If you remember the statement by Louis XIV, Je suis l'État et l'État c'est moi. I am the state and the state is me. No, the state is absolutely not, the president, and the president is not the state. He is only a servant of the people. He acts on behalf of the people. That is why there's a constitution that gives him certain powers, certain authorities to act in certain ways, for the protection and the welfare of the interests of the people. Anything outside of that, he's acting contrary to the provisions of the Constitution and acting contrary to the best interest of the people. And so when you now have journalists who, because, people have said that if you want to understand the level or the degree of freeness of a country, of a democracy, you first of all look at the media. And once you are able to determine the degree of the freeness of the media, that gives you an idea of the level of the democracy that is in place. So because the media and journalists are usually the first, victims of any dictatorship. When things begin to go wrong, they are the ones, because their job is to inform, their job is to make aware, their job is to conscientize the people. They are not politicians and they are not supposed to be politicians. Theirs is to look at the society and to see the direction that the society and the polity is going, including the economy and all of that, and to report accurately, and with a sense of patriotism on what is going on. So you can imagine a situation where things have, fallen off, where the tires are falling off the vehicle, and the vehicle is no longer moving in the right direction. What is the responsibility of the journalist? He has to shout, he has to warn, about what is going on, with the hope that the political leadership will take heed and do a course correction. But what is happening in Africa, we are seeing it increasingly in many parts of the continent, is the increasing intolerance, of politicians for journalists. And so you realize that journalism and journalists are under severe threat in the African political space. And that is exactly what is happening in Cameroon. There is no other logical explanation that can be given, other than there are some people who feel threatened by the possibility that the truth of whatever is going on in Cameroon is going to be exposed. So the best thing, knowing that this exposure is going to come from the media, is to clamp down on the media forcefully and to threaten them, to prevent them from doing their job. And it is the society that is worse off for it. It is society that suffers it.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to our viewers here that you're also National Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, which is why you're so passionate about this aspect that we're discussing, which is, the clampdown on the media and the clampdown on journalists. What can they do? Because rightly, we have pointed out that there is a clampdown on freedom of speech and expression, which is the temperature that the media gives a temperature of what the country's polity is like, what the government is about. So what can journalists in Cameroon do while they cannot speak about their president, and why they cannot speak about what's currently going on or the sort of governance that they're experiencing?
The journalism profession is usually described as a noble profession. There's a reason why that word, is attached to the journalist. His job is ennobling. His job is desired or is destined for the good of society, outside of himself, beyond himself. And his job involves some level of sacrifices and risk-taking if he wants to do that job thoroughly. Because you see, in a situation, in a system where people are benefiting handsomely from by undermining that system, the person who tries to put a light, to shine a light into the darkness, becomes, a threat to those who are operating in darkness. Therefore, the person himself will become a victim sooner or later. So they look, what are the journalists supposed to do? They normally should not be allowed, should not be cowed. I think that is the only thing I can say now. They have a profession to protect, but I know really that if there's one thing that is not taught in any school of journalism anywhere, it is courage, it is boldness. That has to come from the individual. That has to come from the self.
I know that Cameroon is a sovereign state, therefore, even Nigeria, as an equally sovereign state, cannot intervene in what is going on there. But is there any other way that, the international community can be, what any other role, beg your pardon, that the international community, i.e., Nigeria, can, maybe the word is not intervention, but help, maybe? What's going on in Cameroon to help people understand what's happening?
I don't know. I think that's a tough one. That's a difficult one because, there is this thing about removing the speck in your own eyes before telling your neighbor to remove the log. Look, nobody, most African countries have one issue or the other. Of course, some are better than others. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, journalists in Nigeria are enjoying much greater freedom than what you have in Cameroon. But I cannot sit down here and tell you that it is all rosy when it comes to the practice of journalism in Nigeria. We have seen, and newspapers editorials have also written about, the frequent disagreements between the media, journalists, and even the security forces in the country. And they have had cause to also castigate the security forces for their high-handedness. So it is not just a Cameroonian thing. Yes, it is of a much greater degree in Cameroon than in other countries. But regardless of that, what happens in your neighbor, within your territory that is bounded by other countries, so should be of interest to you. Because if there is crisis, we've already seen what is happening with terrorism in Nigeria. Cross-border terrorism, it starts with one country, and then it spreads to nearby countries. And so countries have a duty to ensure as much as possible that the peace prevails in their neighboring countries. So I don't know exactly how Nigeria can actually intervene. Yes, you're absolutely right. Cameroon is a sovereign country, and Nigeria is not expected to solve the problems of Cameroon. That problem has to be solved by the Cameroonian people.
President Paul Biya reminds me of other African leaders who have been in power for long periods of time. And I can name a few of them, but I think that, we'll just, leave them unnamed for the purpose of this conversation so that, we don't face any repercussions regarding the Cameroon issue. But then also is the question of African leaders going abroad for medical treatments, abroad for vacations. What do you make of that?
It's sad. It's sad. It's absolutely sad. And for me, I mean, seriously, if you look at it, if you cannot find joy in your country, especially where you have been given the opportunity and you have the powers to make things better, and you are not able to. And so when you want to enjoy the best of any world is outside of your country, you want to go abroad to enjoy a system that is working, a system that has been built by other political leaders. Then it would appear that the irony is lost on those leaders that believe that gold can be found abroad and not here, in the continent. And you see that all the time, medical trips by political leadership is the clearest indication of a failed leadership across the continent. Even under the military dictatorship in Nigeria, we were having military heads of state flying abroad for treatment, and yet they had the means, they had the capacity to put this same thing here. And don't forget again that we were talking about lost glory here, because we've been told about how the Saudi families that used to come to the University Teaching Hospital in Ibadan, which was one of the best in the world at the time, to take treatment. And so there has been a very sad decline of infrastructure and so many other things and institutions in Nigeria. I think African political leadership need to sit back, and tell themselves that this thing that they have done for the past how many decades has not worked and it's not going to work. Africa continues to move backwards in so many ways. Africa, in terms of general productivity, contributes about 2% to global manufacturing or global productivity. That is a shame for a country that is touted as one of the richest a continent that is touted as one of the richest continents in the world. Now you're beginning to see another scramble, for Africa by different European and Asian countries to tell you that we seem not to have to appreciate what we have, and that our ability to turn the continent, our inability to turn the continent around is something that a lot of other countries are deriding. And it is not good for our political leadership. It is not good for the followership across the continent of Africa that somehow we have not been able to hold our leaders accountable and get them to do the right thing. And so it's not just a failure of leadership. It's also a failure of the entirety of the African people, because it's about every single one of us. The leadership first, because they are the ones that have been given the most for the purpose of turning the continent around, and they have failed. And we have failed also to hold them accountable, to hold them responsible for not living up to their duties and responsibilities.
Achike Chudel, as always, a pleasure speaking with you. This is your first outing on Diplomatic Channel. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Away from Cameroon, Israel's defense forces are pushing back on UN interim forces in Lebanon, following Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's call to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, asking him to remove peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon immediately. The attack on the United Nations interim office in Lebanon happened after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urged the UN to evacuate troops in UNIFIL peacekeeping force from combat areas in Lebanon. Netanyahu said that the military had asked the UN to evacuate the soldiers repeatedly, adding that their presence in the area made them hostages of Hezbollah. UNIFIL said on Saturday a peacekeeper had been hit by gunfire at its headquarters in Nakora, southern Lebanon, and a position at Ramya had been damaged by shelling. It comes as the Israeli army on Sunday published a video showing what it said was a Hezbollah militant entrenched in a tunnel in southern Lebanon. Troops operating in southern Lebanon discovered an underground compound at a depth of approximately 7 meters and a 50-meter hideout area where a Hezbollah terrorist was embedded alongside weapons and equipment for a long-term stay. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said on Sunday Hezbollah fighters will not be allowed back into southern Lebanon's border villages, which they've turned into underground military posts stocked with hundreds of weapons. Meanwhile, Hezbollah rocket barrages triggered sirens across northern Israel overnight and into early Sunday morning. In Haifa, the third biggest Israeli city and host of one of the country's biggest naval ports, sirens and explosions blared across the bay. People rushed to a nearby bomb shelter where a woman was trying to preoccupy children with games in the otherwise grim-looking grey room. An Israeli army spokesperson said in a statement that 5 projectiles were identified crossing from Lebanon into Israeli territory and were successfully intercepted by the IAF. And Iran says it's ready for war, but does not seek it, as the Middle East remains in high alert for Israel to retaliate against Iran's October 1st volley of long-range missiles. Foreign Minister Abbas Arakchi made the comment appearing intended to counter suggestions that Iran would absorb an Israeli strike without response, as it did earlier this year when Israel last struck Iran after an attack of Iranian missiles. The U.S. has promised it will send fresh air defense batteries to Israel to shield it from what the Pentagon has called unprecedented attacks. This is where we end the program today. If you're in Cameroon, tell us what it's been like since the order not to discuss the president's health. Let me know on all of my social media handles and in the comment section below this video on YouTube. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.